Nana. I've been a cosplayer for about 6-7 years already, and if you clicked on this video, it just means you want to learn how to make a Briar cosplay. Before we get into the actual cosplay, I want to say a huge thank you to MomoCon for inviting me this last convention as a content creator. I actually made this costume to compete in their contest, so if you ever want to go check out Awesome Con, I would definitely recommend going to MomoCon. So a fun fact about MomoCon is actually Georgia's response to the lack of comic cons in our area, and it has turned into one of the biggest cons in Georgia. There are a lot of events that happen, there are a lot of cosplays, a lot of gaming stuff, and it's a really fun event to be a part of. And if there's any cons that you want to go to, I would definitely recommend MomoCon. It's always a blast, there's always a rave, and honestly, I'm going again next year. It's a con that I go every year, so I would definitely recommend going if you like to go to conventions. But nonetheless, let's continue. Again, the reason I had made Briar was actually to compete in this and also to see how much I could make a League of Legends cosplay as affordable as possible. With that being said, let's get right into the video. I want to add a quick disclaimer before we get into the video that all forms of cosplay are valid. You can buy Briar's cosplay, you can get her props commissioned, or you can follow this tutorial. If certain methods don't work for you and you want to take a different approach, by all means go for it. Now it's time to get into the actual purpose of this video, which is Briar. I am sorry that I have been yapping for so long, but holy shit, there is a lot that I need to get into. In any case, I come from a household where if something is too expensive to buy, you make it. So today I'm going to go ahead and show you how I made this cosplay and stop talking about things that are not related to this cosplay. So a fun fact about this project is a lot of the things that I used for this was either handmade, thrifted, or things that I already had lying around. But I went ahead and compiled a list of things that you can use that are similar to what I used. The list is as follows. It is a gray or silver wig, air dry foam, silver and gold paint, blush, hairspray, hot glue gun and sticks, hair straightener, Velcro, a sewing kit, black surgical tape, sandals, black and pink lace trim. Before, some of the pieces of this costume were thrifted, so that includes a black halter dress that was made of pleather, as well as some pleather shorts. I thrifted a Ren Fair corset for the middle piece, some leather arm sleeves, 2 oversized belts, and 2 regular belts. We're gonna go ahead and use this diagram right here to show step by step what I worked on first, and we're starting off with the wig. So the wig was an airy wig from a My Hero Academia cosplay that someone had actually gifted my sister a couple years ago. I ended up moving out and she let me have it, so it was just a square wig that I had sitting around. And if I'm not mistaken, this is the same wig I used for my Bouette cosplay a couple months ago. First thing you're going to do, don't detangle the wig, you're going to crimp it. If you don't have a crimper, that's not an issue. You don't necessarily need one. As long as you have a hair straightener and some hairspray, you're good to go. Not brushing out your wig in this process is very important. You want to make sure that it's as crimped as possible so we get the desired volume for this wig. I went ahead and brushed everything out after it was crimped, so it was detangled and everything right after the crimping, so I could get as much volume from that wig as possible. After that process, I went ahead and brushed it out and again got it to the desired volume that I needed it to be. After that process was done, I went ahead and started cutting out each individual spike that was needed for the portion of the wig. For this project, I actually went back and forth and referenced the in-game model as well as the fan art that I've seen on her online. Each individual spike is as accurate to the game model as possible. I'm going to mention something that I didn't do for this project, but I would probably recommend if you plan to do this and sit down and invest a little bit of money into it. Look at the in-game model. Briar's tips are actually a hot pink. They're a bright pink color at the ends of her hair. Now, again, because this cosplay was something I did on a whim and on a budget, I didn't have any fabric dye. But if you're going to be using this project for a long time to come, I would probably recommend using fabric dye. But again, the goal of this costume was to make it as affordable and as less pricey as possible and using things that we had lying around the house. So what I went ahead and did, since I was on a budget, I went ahead and used blush, and trust me, that was such a good substitute. You do have to layer it within the wig so you get the desired color, but after you go ahead and layer that into the wig, you're going to seal it with some hairspray and it doesn't rub off. process wasn't until I finished styling the wig completely. The color wasn't necessarily something that you needed to do before you styled it, but if you're going to be using fabric dye to dye it, I would probably do that before crimping and doing any of this process, and then going in and styling the wig. But yeah, the wig was super easy to make. It was actually a really easy and simple process, and that's pretty much it. Now we're going to be moving into some of the most difficult parts that I did for this costume, which is sculpt the belt buckles that you see in this costume. Because everything was sculpted by hand, it did take about 3 days to fully finish. So it took a couple hours, if I'm not mistaken, it took 24 full hours to dry everything. And then after that was letting it dry from the paint job. Now with my EVA foam, the air dry foam, it doesn't really need a primer. But if you would like to use a primer, you're free to do so. A fun fact about this portion of it is, yes, I had sculpted everything, but once I had finished sculpting everything, I genuinely had no idea how I was going to attach it. So I actually reached out to a couple of mutuals of mine and asked around, hey, I don't know how to attach this. Anyone have any suggestions? And a lot of people actually recommended that I use Velcro. Velcro wasn't a medium that I was familiar with using. I actually didn't even consider using it, but I went ahead and for the purpose of this project, added it to the back of the pieces that I had sculpted, and I also added it to the bodysuit, but we'll get into the bodysuit in just a moment. Calling it the bodysuit, but to be completely honest with you, it's actually 3 pieces of clothing, all thrifted by the way. So a portion of the costume was a turtleneck halter dress and some leather shorts that I had found while thrifting, and also a corset that I found at a store that I was shopping at. Put all 3 of those things together, it does indeed look like a bodysuit, so it kind of just serves its purpose instead of me having to make a full-fledged bodysuit. So the dress was slightly too long, so I did length it to a desirable length so I could tuck it into the shorts, and the lace that you see in the video, I actually had to sew that in. I didn't know until I worked on this project that hot glue doesn't work very well on pleather, so every time that I would glue something down, including those sculpted pieces that I made before, it just would not stick, so I had to use that Velcro method that we mentioned before. Portions of the chest that needed those buckles, I went ahead and sewed in some Velcro straps. I can't stress enough how difficult that was, only because the back portions of the Velcro had a sticky adhesive, so whenever I would sew it in, I had to stab my needle through the dress, and it was so frustrating to work with. The rest of the costume, there weren't that many alterations that I had to make aside from the shorts. I did use some old fabric to add the red patches that go on Briar shorts. Unfortunately, embroidery is not a medium that I am familiar with, but I do plan on expanding there soon. So I went ahead and just sewed on some red patches of fabric in place of the embroidery that's supposed to be there. Like I mentioned before, I wasn't under the impression that hot gluing things to pleather doesn't really work out that well, so I just went ahead and went back and sewed those in as well. The sleeves that I got for this costume were actually repurposed from an old bunny suit that I did back in 2022. Due to the fact that the sleeves also had lace, I also had to hot glue them in on the inside, which actually worked. It stayed on properly, so there wasn't really any need to sew them on. I will say, make sure that when you're working on the sleeves, you have something like a Pringles can inside of the sleeves, just so they're stretched out while you're gluing the lace down. Only because if you don't do this, you risk the possibility of the sleeve just not fitting you anymore. Because once you glue something down that isn't stretched out, you're not going to have that stretch that you need. Funny is I didn't even buy teeth for this costume. I made them as well. I just used moldable plastic pellets that I had on hand for previous costumes, and I just melted them, molded them to my teeth, and yeah. So for the prop, I'm going to be completely honest when I say this. I'm not incredibly skilled at making props, and a lot of the previous props that I've made have either been through cardboard or through affordable resources, and I have never worked with EVA foam prior to this project. The only time that I did use EVA foam was for my Mercy wings back in 2022, but I don't take credit for that since all I did was just cut out the foam and stick them onto pre-made wings that were already there. So I was already nervous to work on this, to say the least. Because I was so confused with how to work on this project, I went ahead and purchased a pattern that I heavily referenced when making this. Something I want to mention, I'll go ahead and link that below, but something that I wanted to mention is it's not a tutorial, it's just quite literally a pattern, and it gives you tips and such, but it doesn't really break down how to put everything together. So didn't read the disclaimer that said that this wasn't a beginner-friendly project, so I just sort of pushed through it. Started cutting out the pieces for the pattern as it was called for, and some of the steps didn't necessarily make sense to me, so I ended up taking my own route and referencing the 3D model along with the prop pattern that I had purchased. I didn't have any contact cement or any expensive adhesive. It was just EVA foam, hot glue gun, and a heat gun to shape it. I really only have clips of what I did to work on the prop. I can't really explain what I did because, again, it's not something that I'm familiar with, and I really wouldn't be able to give you a good explanation because I haven't previously worked on EVA foam before, so this was really just trial and error for me as well. Do you want to add a couple notes, including what I did to make my prop glue? The issue with the pattern that it was structured in a way that there were 3 individual pieces. One was the left side, one was the right side, and then finally the gem piece in the middle that was supposed to glow was what held it together. I wanted to make the prop glow, but I needed to find a way to make it so I could connect the left and the right pieces and have the gem glowing as well. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to figure that out. The prop on the inside is hollow, so what I was only able to do was I was able to put in some string lights on each side of the prop except the middle. I really wanted the gemstone to glow, but due to stability and how I wanted my prop to work, it wasn't going to work. I will mention a good substitute for that if the rest of your prop is glowing is holographic vinyl. So the gemstone that I found is actually like hot pink. So I went ahead and bought some hot pink holographic vinyl, and it gave the illusion that it was glowing, which was really, really good and actually helped with what I was trying to do for my project. Again, I'm not going to be going into depth as to how I made the prop, only because I was able to make the prop as a miracle. Again, it was very trial and error and I had a hard time doing so I'm very sorry about that. I'm using for Briar are actually from Pinky Paradise, and there's some white mesh lenses. I will say if you plan on wearing this to a convention, it can be very difficult on your vision, and your vision is incredibly foggy when you wear them. So I would recommend to just be careful whenever you are wearing these lenses, because again, I really couldn't see. I kept bumping into people on accident, and you know, it was just kind of hard to see. But yeah, that's pretty much everything that I did for Briar. I want to sit down and talk about some math that I did. I know math is terrible and we all hate math, but the math for this is actually kind of insane, so I wanted to share that with you all. If we do the math on how much everything would cost me to make Briar, it would be approximately $127.90 without the wig because I had already owned it, but with the wig it was $156.90, including the cosplay as well as the prop and the wig. If you were to purchase this cosplay off of AliExpress with the wig, the costume, and a prop made for you, it would cost approximately $833.11. And with this tutorial, I pretty much made it $676.21 cheaper to make it. The fact that this cosplay was not very expensive to make, it was quite a fun cosplay project to try out because League of Legends cosplays are so complicated and very detailed, and that was a very fun piece to incorporate onto the project while I was working on it. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to record when I was making the foot spikes and how I attached them to my shoes, but pretty much it was the same process of making the spikes on the prop. I just cut out 4 triangular or acute triangle pieces and put them together in the shape of a diamond, and then when con came around, I went ahead and I made leg braces. So I would tie the leg braces around my ankles, and then I'd go around my foot with the surgical bandage so it would look like I was barefooted when I wasn't. But all in all, in my opinion, this cosplay was a really, really easy project to work on. Aside from a couple other things, it did take about 2 months for me to fully make everything and finish everything before the con started. But yeah, I'll show you guys some clips at the end of when I was on stage and competing. Unfortunately, again, I didn't get to win anything, but that's not the point of competing. Again, I want to say thank you to MomoCon for even inviting me to be a content creator. I genuinely really appreciate it. I don't think I would have been able to go to MomoCon this year if I hadn't been invited, so I want to extend my gratitude. I genuinely hope that this tutorial was easy to follow and helpful, and I would really appreciate if you reference this video, tag me. I would love to see how I was able to help you with your cosplay. For more stuff like this, make sure you subscribe, and I will be doing my best to upload as often as I can. I know the last time I uploaded was a while ago, but in any case, I'm going to try and start uploading more. But I appreciate you all, and I hope to see you guys in the next one.